Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know we love to dig into all sorts of fascinating topics, and today we're looking at something you might not expect. The economics of cattle ranching.
Cattle ranching and math.
Exactly. We've got this super interesting academic paper from Notre Dame, and it was just published this month, December 2024.
Oh, wow. So it's cutting edge.
It is, and it's all about how ranchers can use something called the Markov chain to make,
Yeah.
well, smarter decisions about their herds.
A Markov chain.
Okay?
Oh,
Yeah, I know. It sounds a little intimidating, right? But the paper, it's by Cassio Cristani, really does a great job of breaking it down and showing how these mathematical models can be applied to all kinds of fields.
not just for ranchers, then.
Not at all. It's about strategic decision-making no matter what you're into.
So, like, how does this Markov chain thing actually work? I have to admit, I'm not exactly a statistics whiz.
Me neither.
Yeah.
But imagine you're a rancher and you're trying to figure out, how big your herd's going to be next year. You could look at, like, historical data, sure.
Yeah.
But what's even more important is understanding the current state of your herd. How many breeding cows do you have right now?
Okay, so that's where the Markov model comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It basically says that the future of a system, in this case your herd, depends only on its current state, not on, like, what happened way back when.
Huh. So, if a cow is, say, a breeding cow today, what happens to her next, does she have a calf? Does she become, what was it?
A cull cow?
Yeah, a cull cow.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
depends on her situation right now, not on what she was doing a year ago or 5 years ago.
Gotcha. And just to be clear, a cull cow is?
Well, it's a cow that's basically retired from breeding, could be because of age, maybe health issues,
Okay.
but it's a distinct stage, in a cow's, well, career path.
A bovine career path. I like that.
So it's kind of like a flow chart.
Mm.
Each stage of a cow's life can lead to another stage,
Yeah.
and there are probabilities along the way. The paper talks about breeding cows, male calves, female calves, yearling males, yearling heifers, fattening males. It lays out the whole thing.
Wow, so it's really comprehensive.
It is. Each stage has a specific role in the whole herd dynamics, and understanding those roles is, like, essential for running a successful ranch. Like those cull cows we talked about, knowing when and why they move out of the breeding cycle is super important.
For the health of the herd, but also the profitability, I bet.
You got it. So
Why?
then the question is, how do we figure out the odds of a cow, moving from one stage to the next?
Right.
And the paper talks about these transition probabilities.
Transition probabilities, okay.
Yeah. So, for example, it uses breeding cows. It says they have an 80% fertility rate and then a 50-50 chance of having a male calf or a female calf.
Makes sense. And those probabilities, where do they come from?
Well, things like the breed of the cow, veterinary science, the overall health of the herd.
I see, so it's based on real-world factors.
Definitely. And using those probabilities, ranchers can start to get a pretty good idea of how their herd might change over time. But of course, ranching isn't just about cows. It's a business.
Absolutely. You got to make a profit, right?
Exactly. And that's where things get even more interesting. The paper has this simplified cost model that takes into account the costs of buying breeding cows, how much it costs to keep them healthy, their annual maintenance, and then the money you make from selling fattening males. And yes, even cull cows.
Oh, interesting. So you can actually put a dollar value on each stage of a cow's life.
You can. And that's how the Markov model helps ranchers see not just how their herd might grow, but how those changes actually impact their bottom line.
That's pretty powerful. So it's like a financial forecasting tool for ranchers.
Exactly. It lets them evaluate different strategies and see which ones will likely be the most profitable. For instance, the paper looks at two totally different scenarios. One is, like, starting with a full herd right away.
Go big or go home.
Right. And the other is what they call a bootstrapping approach, where you start small and gradually build your herd over time. It's kind of like, I don't know, choosing between, like, investing in a high-growth stock or a slow and steady bond.
That's a good analogy.
Each one has, its own risks and rewards.
Right. With the big herd, you need a lot of cash up front, but the potential payoff is faster. But with bootstrapping, you're minimizing your initial costs.
But it takes longer to, to see any return.
It does. So which path makes the most sense? Well, it all depends. The rancher's individual goals, their resources.
And this model helps them weigh those options, make an informed decision.
Exactly.
And it seems like this model, it's really adaptable. The paper talks about something called weighted policies. What are those all about?
Oh, yeah, weighted policies. They let ranchers, they can kind of fine-tune their strategies, by putting different emphasis on certain stages of, a cow's life.
Like how?
Well, say a rancher wants to really focus on breeding. They might decide to, like, sell male calves early,
Okay.
or maybe they want to prioritize rearing. They could hold on to those yearling males for a while longer.
Ah, so by adjusting those weights, they're kind of shifting the whole flow of the herd, like adapting to changing markets.
Exactly, or, pursuing different objectives. It's like having a set of dials that you can tweak to, like, optimize performance.
I like that, a set of dials. And the Markov model helps you see how those tweaks, how they actually play out.
It predicts how they impact, herd size, the makeup of the herd, and most importantly, the rancher's profits.
This is a really powerful model.
Mm.
But I gotta ask, real world ranching, it's messy. There are a lot of factors that are totally out of a rancher's control.
Oh, absolutely. You've got unpredictable weather,
Right.
fluctuating feed costs, global markets. None of those are in the model.
Which can really affect a rancher's bottom line.
Big time.
It makes you realize how interconnected everything is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about cows, but really we're talking about, global supply chains.
We're talking about the price of beef at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It is. And the paper focuses on, like a simplified model, but it really highlights how useful math can be for understanding these complex systems.
And for making smart decisions, no matter what field you're in.
Exactly.
So even if none of us are planning to become ranchers, there's some important lessons here for everyone.
Totally. The first one is just the power of modeling itself. We tend to think of math as, this abstract thing.
Right.
But this paper shows us how practical it can be.
For solving real-world problems.
Exactly.
It gives you a framework
Yeah.
for breaking down a problem and then exploring, different solutions.
Yeah. And the second takeaway is, well, adaptability. The cattle market, like any market, it's always changing.
Right.
Ranchers have to be able to adapt their strategies on the fly. And the Markov model, it lets them do that.
It's not just about, crunching numbers.
It's about using those numbers to, navigate a complex landscape.
What about this research really stood out to you?
Well, what's really fascinating is, the potential for applying this type of modeling to other fields.
Beyond ranching.
Yeah. We've seen it work for cows, but imagine using Markov models to, I don't know, manage forests, optimize supply chains, even public health policy.
So the same model that helps a rancher decide when to sell a cow could be used to make decisions about, vaccine distribution.
During a pandemic.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a direct translation, obviously, but the core principles, they're the same. Understanding these complex systems.
With interconnected parts.
Yes, and making decisions that, get you the outcome you want.
It's pretty remarkable to think about all the potential applications.
It is. This model, it gives us a new way to look at the world. You start to see these hidden patterns.
Connections.
Yeah, and that's the power of math. It gives us this language to describe the world, to understand it.
We started off talking about cows and ranches.
Yeah.
But we've really uncovered something much bigger.
We have. These mathematical models, like the Markov chain, it's a framework, for understanding really complex systems.
And then using that understanding to make better decisions.
In all sorts of fields.
It's like someone handed us this powerful new tool.
And we're just figuring out how to use it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this kind of research so exciting. It's like a whole world of possibilities opening up.
It really is.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Oh, a challenge.
Yeah. Think about your own area of expertise, or even just something you're curious about.
Okay.
What are some of the complex systems that you bump into every day in your work, in your life?
Right.
Could you use this kind of modeling to, I don't know, learn something new, make a better prediction, or maybe even come up with a better strategy?
So, how would someone even get started with that?
Well, it might seem daunting, but remember, you can break down even the most complex system.
Into smaller pieces.
Right. Start by figuring out what the key variables are.
Okay.
What are the different states of the system?
Yeah.
And then how do those states connect to each other? What are the transition probabilities?
With probabilities again.
Yeah. And then, don't be afraid to experiment.
Play around with it.
Exactly. Try out different models. See what you discover. You might be surprised by what you find.
A little math can go a long way.
It really can. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cattle ranching.
Markov chains.
And the power of mathematical modeling.
We hope you learned something new.
And maybe even got inspired to think differently about, well, about the challenges and the opportunities in your own life.
Until next time,
Stay curious.
and keep exploring.